Today, we will be providing feedback of candidates' performance during mock professional registration interviews. We'll also provide you with examples of good responses so you can avoid making the same mistakes when producing your report or when responding to questions during the professional registration interview. Please let us know if you would like to attend our mock interview or if you are preparing for an interview and you would like help with preparation. You might have to pause the video as you go through so you can read in between the lines. Thank you. We'll start with the first competence or attribute. So that's understanding and practical application of engineering. So for the ICE, that's the first attribute. And then that falls under the UK spec competence A and B. So the candidate has to provide satisfactory evidence for both sections, so the understanding bit and also the practical application bit. So we'll start by considering the understanding portion of this segment. Through teaching at a university, the first candidates demonstrated how they assess the differing abilities of their students and support them in different ways to progress. Through their PhD work, they have developed their own knowledge and skills. So for the first candidates, it is satisfactory. The candidates presented their research work on fatigue of fiber-reinforced polymeric composites, developing a constitutive model for composites. This included identification of fatigue crack and its propagation. They performed significant numerical modeling and showed how they adjusted the model to address spurious stress results. They also demonstrated their technical knowledge through teaching work at the university. So again, satisfactory evidence on the understanding of engineering. And for a third example, the candidate clearly has a very thorough understanding of mathematical models and how they are applied to analysis of the behavior of fiber-reinforced polymer composites. They have published many papers on the subject and are an expert in the field. During the interview, they were enthusiastic about the potential for use of the composite in civil engineering projects. Their knowledge is clearly sufficient in this area, and they provided examples of teaching students strength of materials in Europe and also in Asia. So again, this is satisfactory evidence. Now we will consider the second segment of the first attribute. So that's the practical application of engineering. Although they have undertaken a significant analytical research program, there was no evidence that they had undertaken a parallel program of practical laboratory testing, rather relying on data provided by others. In discussing the 1 kilometer suspended bridge, they were unable to substantiate the type of testing that should have been performed to confirm the usage of the suspension cables for the project. So unsatisfactory evidence was provided here. Now, we identified that the candidate makes judgments in relation to the development of their mathematical models. However, because of their lack of demonstration of practical application of engineering, we failed to identify any significant examples where they exercised sound engineering judgment and judged that this attribute had not been fully demonstrated. During the interview, the candidate failed to provide any significant detail of the construction sequence that they worked on for the suspended bridge erection. We concluded that the candidate had failed to demonstrate that they can undertake design, development, and implementation of engineering solutions at an appropriate level for a chartered engineer. So again, unsatisfactory evidence. So in effect, the candidates showed that they had a very good understanding of engineering. However, they failed in the practical application segment. Their report made very little reference to practical experience of construction activities, making it difficult to see clear evidence of the development of engineering solutions or their evaluation. Their recent experience has been related to research, and they clearly appreciate the importance of this in methodology and outcome. They referred to how fiber-reinforced polymer composites is used in the industry, but they did not demonstrate this by personal example of their knowledge and experience of their use. They stated the areas of the industry where they can be used, but offered no evidence of the process required to incorporate the information from the models into industry and infrastructure. While they showed some strengths in the practical application of engineering overall, there is not sufficient evidence of involvement in the practical outcomes or dealing with issues of end use. So again, this is unsatisfactory. Their report adequately demonstrated their ability to decide the direction their research projects should take. They explained that they were successful in several different circumstances in promoting research projects they were seeking to undertake. They provided clear evidence of their enthusiasm to promote the use of computational tools in civil engineering projects. So this was a satisfactory demonstration of their the ability to perform research. So just to let you know, these candidates were strong in the research bit because they worked in the academic field. They were PhD students, so obviously they had a very, very good theoretical background of engineering. At the interview, the candidates failed to demonstrate how further learning through training, seminars, and discussing engineering with colleagues is applied to their role. So for another candidate, during the interview, the candidate provided a good example of innovation by modernizing an aging HVAC system. However, when the applicant was questioned on calculations and technical detail for the upgraded HVAC system, they failed to provide appropriate detail. At the interview, the candidates failed to demonstrate the design processes they used to solve an engineering problem. The candidate was unable to demonstrate an understanding of how research and analysis is important to solving engineering problems. So in order for us to arrive at a decision, the written application of the candidates and their performance during the mock interview was considered. So we would look at a sample good response that a candidate should have provided in their written application under the understanding and practical application of engineering, with special focus on the practical application of engineering. So we'll look at a sample good response under the understanding and practical application of engineering attributes, with special focus on the independent engineering judgment section, because this is the one of the key areas that the candidate has to provide evidence for their ability to exercise sound independent engineering judgment. I requested a ground penetrating radar GPR scan of the subsurface to determine its properties, investigate underground utilities, and locate the pile grid. I analyzed the GPR report and used center lines of areas of dense reinforcement to pinpoint the grid lines, and deduced that these would be the kyle caps. The floor was largely representative of the preliminary drawing, except for one grid line being situated further along than shown. I used the building's layout to calculate the loaded area that a typical column would support. I assessed the point load on the floor span between the piles using first principles. So that's very important. I determined the slab's reinforcement would not be sufficient. Next, I considered measuring the capacity of the piles using a dynamic or static load. However, the number of piles for a reasonable sample size and the lack of cartilage weights due to congestion on the site meant this was not practical. I reverse engineered the building to assess what the capacity of the piles would have been. I researched the imposed load per meter height of storage the building would have been designed for using the British standard 63991. So that's a code of practice for dead and imposed loads. I concluded that the piles had sufficient capacity. I used this evidence to suggest using a transfer structure to bypass the floor slab, which would reduce damage and get loads to the piles. So clearly, the candidates in their written application demonstrated independent engineering judgment. So this has to be clearly spelled out in your reports. We'll consider the management and leadership attributes. So that's under the UK spec competence C. The candidate's report was clear and well presented. They made good use of the appendix allowance, and the information provided supported the main document. The report, however, presents little evidence of leadership in the workplace, although the activities they do perform will suggest that they have had experience in this area. We would recommend that they provide more evidence to support these attributes in their submission for chartered professional review, particularly in the areas of leading or influencing teams and technical specialism in understanding the limits of their skills and knowledge, and in developing others to meet changing technical and managerial needs. So this was an unsatisfactory evidence provided by the candidate. In their professional report presentation and during the interview, The candidate failed to provide adequate evidence of their experience and abilities in managing people and in demonstrating leadership. They failed to demonstrate how they personally managed teams, direct and control tasks, people, and resources to a level that might be expected of a chartered engineer. They are clearly able to manage their research and they planned out their PhD. Their research work has been carried out predominantly by them. Their report refers to recruitment of a small group of people to assist them, but they did not provide sufficient evidence of their capabilities to manage and lead a team, either in their report or during the interview. There was no clear evidence of quality management in any of their work as presented. So as you prepare your report and also as you prepare for your interview, it's important to know the meaning of quality management, and obviously provide evidence of how you ensured quality throughout your project. The applicant has limited understanding of planning and project management, and he took several probing questions to obtain relevant information around planning and managing projects. The applicant has a large team working for them, but when questioned during the interview around team development, the applicant struggled to answer how they effectively manage and develop the team. So, a very good knowledge of the English language is important for both your written application and your performance during the professional registration interview. Many candidates struggle under the commercial ability section, and what we will do is we'll consider the performance of candidates, some of our candidates during the mock interview, and we will provide you with some ideas for how you can provide evidence of commercial ability, even if you do not manage budgets as part of your work. In their report and during the interview, the candidate failed to demonstrate any significant commercial responsibility from the experience they presented. They were unable to provide any details of professional indemnity insurance they should have held while carrying out consultancy work. They failed to demonstrate an effective understanding of commercial rates for design work and how commercial risks should be managed. They did not provide any evidence of preparing or controlling a budget of any significance. They did not display sufficient understanding of the commercial aspects of their research projects. They referred to negotiations on expenses and recruitment of short-term staff, the value and involvement of which were very small. They did not provide evidence of a knowledge of the overall costs to create a mathematical model for carrying out assessments of various materials. No reference was made to administration of the modeling contracts that they have been involved with or the end cost. When questioned on how a fixed term incremental cost contract deals with unplanned or unforeseen events, they did not know what the process was. They also showed little evidence of awareness of the commercial framework for undertaking research work for a large organization or the differences between different types of contracts used for research work. The applicant has no budgetary control as part of their role, but they provided an example of using alternative stainless steel grades as part of financial sustainability. Now, if you are struggling with examples of evidence you can provide, we'll provide a few for you here to give you some guidance on what to provide under the commercial ability section. So the first is you can determine the capital in service value for your project, which is based on things like the business case summary and estimates for project planning effort, engineering design effort, field installation effort, field commissioning effort, installation closeout, project oversight, and material costs. Now, the in-service amount will vary, obviously, depending on the phase of the project design cycle. So, new design variant installations are more costly than a repeat installation of the same variant. Another example you can provide is you can determine the cost avoidance from performing the engineering work yourself or by your business unit instead of contracting it out to a vendor. So early identification of major and minor deficiencies. So if you can calculate how much you've saved your company by performing the work yourself instead of contracting it out. You can also determine cost savings from efficient resource management, rework prevention, schedule accuracy, and adherence. And a good understanding of contract types would help you consider the advantages and disadvantages of the different contracts. Which contract did you use for your project? Why was it selected? And have a very good knowledge of other contract types. And finally, you can analyze contract variations as part of your work and provide examples of where you negotiated for additional funds to support your project. The health, safety, and welfare attribute is important, and for the ICE, it is imperative that the candidate provides sufficient evidence under this attribute, or else it will be an outright fail. The candidate was able to identify the relevant OSHA regulations and have undertaken appropriate training and development. They also demonstrated an awareness of CDM regulations and their importance in design. However, there was little evidence of practical application and of how they have managed risks and associated health, safety, and welfare implications arising from their work. They showed little evidence of controlling and managing risks to students in the laboratory and acknowledged that safety briefs to the students were provided by others. So this is unsatisfactory. To be considered for chartered engineer status, you must provide evidence of where you directly impacted on safety. So you must be responsible for the safety of people who work with you, people who work for you. You must be involved in the safety policies being enforced at your workplace. So it's not enough to say you're providing PPE. You must go the extra mile to show how you have improved safety, safe behaviors at work. Now, whilst they claim to have established the construction sequence for the 1 kilometer suspension bridge, There was little evidence presented of significant health and safety considerations resulting from their decisions. We concluded that they had failed to demonstrate any form of leadership in health and safety. And so, for this reason alone, the candidate was not considered for chartered engineer status with the ICE. They did not provide any evidence of the safety responsibilities of a chartered civil engineer. There was insufficient evidence of the type required to demonstrate that they fully understand the safety responsibilities of a chartered civil engineer. When questioned about providing evidence on these attributes, health and safety, they referred to wearing high visibility jackets when students visited site. Insufficient reference was made to their experience of the use of mathematical models to improve the safety of the industry or the use of design codes, buildability, and the CDM regulations. When asked about safety, they responded that safety is always put first, but they failed to provide sufficient examples of how they had personally put safety first throughout their career. There was generally insufficient evidence in their submission or during their interview of leading attempts to improve health, safety, and welfare at work. We'll consider one candidate that performed well under the health, safety, and welfare because the candidate provided a comprehensive response to considering health and safety for site operations. In addition, the candidate explained how they took specific steps to address safety concerns on the construction site. So it was a satisfactory performance for this candidate on the health, safety, and welfare. We will go ahead and consider a good response on the health, safety, and welfare. I produced the project risk assessment and specified that personnel should not go within 2 meters of the edge of the building's roof. However, one of the supervisors got complacent and put himself and his team in danger by working within 1 meter from the edge of the building's roof. After coaching him and his team, we had a review with our safety, health, environment, and quality advisor. I recorded the event as a near miss and identified project stress and complacency in our environment as the causes. I identified that the site safety regulations should be updated to mandate the use of a travel restraint system. I also recommended that our policy is amended so a copy of the risk assessment method statement is carried whenever on site and the team are required to review the document against the plan of works at the start of each day. Under sustainable development, it is important to keep an eye on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, UN SDGs, and also to fully understand the 3 pillars of sustainability. The applicant expressed a clear understanding of the 3 pillars of sustainability and explained the need for sustainable material usage and waste management. They have previously carried out research work on building natural ventilation and identified that their current research work reduces the weight of aeronautical components, leading to savings in fuel and costs. Furthermore, they identified that their work could in future be used to undertake structural repairs and maintain the lifespan of assets. They enthusiastically discussed the challenges of ecological impact and destruction of the environmental habitat in Africa and suggested that the solution would lie in future legislation. Their research projects and presentation adequately reflected their commitment to the search for sustainable solutions. They showed awareness of the three pillars of sustainability and could relate them to the contents of their submission and the works they have been involved in. They had a very good appreciation of the sustainable benefits of fiber reinforced polymer composites, and their passion for this material was clearly demonstrated given several examples of future usage. The applicants provided details of how sustainability is important in their role and what they do to promote it. They also pointed out the need to identify other methods of saving energy. So please consider all these points and be ready to provide answers to them in your reports and also during the interview. For the interpersonal skills and communication, you must ensure that you have a very good grasp of the English language. You must also be aware that diversity and inclusion is a strong focus. Be ready to provide evidence on that area. So we will consider the performance of some candidates during the mock interview. So for the first one, their report was well written, but some sections did not give adequate direction from which positive conclusions could be drawn with respect to some of the attributes. Their presentation was well delivered and they gave clear responses to most of the questions. They have given effective lectures and conference presentations to a diverse audience and used alternative forms of communication media as appropriate. The candidate's application was well presented in English, and this provided written evidence of using English to produce reports, drawings, and other communications, including meetings. However, this was not matched by their understanding of the questions posed at the interview and their spoken responses. So in this example, the candidate had provided a very good quality report in English. However, the candidate struggled during the interview as they could not respond to the questions asked because they didn't understand them. Their presentation was completed in the allotted time. It adequately covered the content of their report and the assessment of how they had gained the required level of attainment in all the attributes. At the interview, they answered questions confidently and they were able to establish a rapport in terms of describing what they did and the factors that drive their research. They have a proven ability to teach complex subjects to students in lectures. They adequately displayed their knowledge of diversity in civil engineering in general terms. They spoke about the importance of diversity in students' experience and stated that leadership enforces inclusion in learning. They have had numerous papers published as author or co-author. When planning research publications, they showed evidence of being able to consider their target audience and the impact of their work when choosing which journal to publish in. So for these other candidates, They could not describe how they promoted diversity and inclusion in the workplace, especially around tailoring communication to suit individual needs. So a very big problem there for this candidate. Under professional commitment, the candidate has demonstrated clear engagement with numerous professional bodies, which should be recorded on their PDR. They have mentored engineers and have acted as an academic paper reviewer. They discussed their ethical responsibilities, including giving due acknowledgement for the work of others. They were aware of the ICE Code of Conduct and expressed their wish to become professionally qualified to uplift their status when they return to work in Africa. Their CPD and DAP are satisfactory. They have made many contributions to technical journals and are an expert in their chosen field, and they referred to mentoring others. However, they are applying to become a chartered member of the Institution of Civil Engineers, but did not demonstrate a sufficient commitment to this institution either now or in the future. When asked how they would progress if successful at their professional review, they stated that they would attend more ICE events. It would have been beneficial and would show more commitment had they already been attending those planned events now. So for this reason, unsatisfactory evidence has been provided. Their development action plan shows a reasonable range of development activities, and their plan to achieve their targets is well thought out. Their CPD log shows a broad range of learning activities, but few concern health and safety. So we would advise them to review their recent training and on-the-job learning to identify more recordable activities related to health and safety prior to submitting their chartered professional review. So candidates are advised to perform at least one training in health and safety every quarter as part of their development plan. So the applicant does not have a clear CPD plan. So this is another candidate, and for that, that is unsatisfactory. And for another candidate, during the interview, the applicant demonstrated that they have read the code of conduct of the professional institution and provided an example of how integrity and honesty is important to their role. And another candidate provided written evidence of mentoring engineers. So, thank you very much for watching. Do not hesitate to contact us if you require support. And finally, do not forget to subscribe to this channel. I would appreciate it if you liked the video. This always motivates us to create more videos. So thank you very much, and have an amazing day. I wish you the very best in your pursuit of becoming a chartered engineer or in your pursuit as a professional engineer. Thank you.